Hey all, Alex here at your home of the Music Deep Dive, and today we'll be doing a review of the novella by Charles Dickens, first published the 19th of December, 1843, A Christmas Carol, in prose, being a ghost story of Christmas. The interesting part of A Christmas Carol, a name I'm sure most are familiar with, is that it was birthed out of financial necessity after Dickens' most recent novels had struggled from a sales standpoint, including his then ongoing serial, Martin Chuzzlewit. The pressure was placed on the author to publish something more commercial to suit his publishers better. Christmas themes had been a favorite of Dickens beforehand, bearing mention in both Sketches by Boz and the Pickwick Papers, and writing a shorter form novel, or novella, celebrating the holiday seemed like a natural extension of this thematic approach. The early Victorian era in England had helped birth a renaissance in Christmas celebrations, perhaps inspired by the United States' embracing of Christmas celebrations following, among other things, Washington Irving's depiction of the holiday in his sketchbook of Geoffrey Crayon. Pair this renewed interest with the writing skills of Dickens, himself inspired by Irving, and it's not a surprise that A Christmas Carol, featuring an elaborate cloth binding on first publication, ended up being a smash success both in England and especially in the United States, where to this day it remains his most popular work ever. So let us start with the ubiquitous, which there's a lot of kind of ubiquitous elements in this story, but specifically I mean the character of Ebenezer Scrooge. A character that is so widely known at this point that the word Scrooge became a noun on its own, synonymous with the word miser. Scrooge's character arc is one of the most famous and widely imitated in all of Western literature, and upon rereading this story for the first time in several years, I think the impact of it gets oversimplified a lot. Sure, you could argue that at the end of the day, this is just some kind of magical little fairy tale where Scrooge is inspired by the goodness of Christmas spirit or whatever to kind of cast aside his evil ways. But it's kind of a hard journey, actually. There are some heavy moments, especially in those scenes with the Ghost of Christmas Past, where Scrooge confronts his younger years, his isolation as a young boy. And Dickens is just so effective at making the reader instantly sympathetic to Scrooge at this point in the story. And that sympathy is important because when Scrooge is visited by the ghosts of Christmas present and future, we view him as a protagonist rather than an antagonist, someone who in a way is already aware of how he has wronged people and just needs some coaxing to kind of admit it to himself properly. The whole scene with the Ghost of Christmas Future is literally an entire front-to-back depiction of someone in denial. He knows almost instantly what he is being shown, what the point of it all is, but he refuses to admit it to himself because that requires an acceptance of the truth and a commitment to change. He can't accept that until it is literally in front of him, written in black and white, his name on a tombstone. I suppose you could argue that the public reaction to Scrooge's personality change is one of far too little skepticism, but this was meant to be an uplifting tale. After all, I think we can spare Mr. Dickens a bit of sentimentality here. The character of Scrooge is so completely central to the tale that I'd forgive you if you'd forgotten everybody else's name involved. And yet, all these other characters are pretty strongly written. Jacob Marley's ghost, Fezziwig, Tiny Tim is one that has endured more for what he represents maybe than anything else. And I think the impact of the sort of young disabled lad is less due to anything he says and more the outstanding writing and character development of his father, Bob Cratchit. I would rate Cratchit among Dickens' most sympathetic and emotionally dense side characters, able to kind of take verbal abuse from his boss with a smile while concealing this world of stress and sadness that he lives in internally, which he in turn tries to hide from his wife and children, but he kind of lets the facade down a little bit more and you get some really heart-wrenching moments at times. It's a beautifully realistic bit of writing that really gives A Christmas Carol its heart. And I think the plight of the Cratchits was what helped the general public kind of identify with the story more. Further evidence of how Dickens' own working class background in his own life really emerged in his writings on a very genuine level. And yeah, what more can be said? A Christmas Carol has sort of entered popular culture not just in the West, but I would argue on a truly global scale to the extent that very few other stories in the history of humanity have. Call it a product of strong writing and storytelling, call it a product of the pervasive, widespread influence of Christianity, however you want to look at it, but I do think that the strength of the story supports the sort of widespread renown that it has received. Even though the early 1840s are widely considered Dickens' weakest period creatively, if you need evidence of how strong he could still be when he was at the top of his game, this is it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And all other Christmas stories, English or otherwise, follow in its footsteps in the quest to portray the very best that the holiday season, or perhaps more likely humanity, can offer. And that's it. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Dickens did write a number of other Christmas short stories and novellas, which, at least for the time being, I'm not going to be reviewing here, trying to focus on the novels and other works as best as I can. But really hope you enjoyed this review specifically. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. As always, more reviews are to come. Tell a friend as well, please. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time right here at your home of the Music Deep Dive.